I don't want you open. You open it. I don't want to open it.
That sweatshirt looks good on you.
Thank you. They just in time for summer.
Well, if it was just in time for summer, you would get lightweight hoodie. And B.Friendly Fitness just got a couple lightweight hoodies, actually.
That's what I've heard.
I haven't advertised any of them yet, but we'll have a couple available for people at some point. So be on the lookout for that.
I saw quite a few B.Friendly shirts at Crescendo.
Man, we got to have I need to have a better plan for that overall. There were maybe a dozen people there that asked if we had any stuff for sale. There were a few people that had like old stuff that were wearing them there, which is really cool.
I saw a couple teams, like that. So,
but people were asking for some stuff, and I didn't have any, and I should have had some. I mean, especially for a competition like that where I can drive. Sarah Cooper, need a code for international shipping, please. I am planning. So I actually have. Maybe I should just grab. I don't know. I have a couple. We call them the basic tee. They're like a charcoal or dark gray t-shirts. I have some black. I think women's tank tops, a very few, and then some black long sleeve lightweight hoodies that are actually perfect for like spring weather or cool summer nights or stuff like that. And I will probably post a picture of maybe me wearing them. I don't know, or get someone at the gym to wear them. And I'll have a limited number of sizes available for to bring with me to the semifinals. So potentially, especially if you're in Europe and you're looking to pick up something that's B.Friendly Fitness, we might be able to help you out with that. Thomas Stroud, what's up, Ryan? It was great seeing you this weekend. Thanks for your coverage. Thomas Stroud was on site there at Crash Crescendo. He's taking some pictures. I reposted one of his pictures that he took of me. He got some great pictures of a bunch of the athletes. Super nice guy. Good photographer as well. Canada, Sarah. Okay, well, we can what we can do then, we can I can bring one potentially to Chad when we see him in Knoxville, Tennessee for the last week of semifinals, and we can get one to you that he can bring it back. And obviously a lot easier to transport within Canada, and you don't have to deal with the international shipping there. So we can probably make that work for you, especially for you, one of our best supporters here all the time. So anyway, be on the lookout for some stuff as far as that's concerned. Yesterday, I had a friend in town still, and I was actually taking him to the airport, but PC came on and had Chad's making me laugh. PC came on with Andrea Nistler, had a nice, like a 45-minute or so conversation with her about what her season's been like, her year, and just kind of catching up with her. So if you guys missed that, that was yesterday. And we have a pretty full week of stuff this week. Catch up today with everything that's been going on, Crescendo, quarterfinals, etc. We may or may not have a guest joining us at this point in the show. We'll see. And then tomorrow we have Griffin Raleigh coming on. I actually got invited to go out to Atlanta this upcoming weekend for a grid training camp. The Grid League is making a little change this year. They're expanding back outside of Florida to the United Grid League. And the Atlanta Wild manager called me up and asked if I would come out for a training camp. So Griffin's going to come on. He's a cool dude. Anyway, we'll catch up with him about a bunch of different stuff and talk about that. And then I'll be out in Atlanta this weekend. Thursday, Kiefer Lamy and Kyra Milligan from Underdogs Athletics will be on the show, and always fun to talk to Kiefer. I haven't spoken with Kyra in a while, but obviously she's off to a good start with her individual season after the success that she had last year with the Mayhem team. So that's kind of the lineup for this week. And then just looking forward, next week we'll have some shows on Monday, Tuesday, and then I'll hit the road for basically a month straight of travel. Athens Throwdown will be the final weekend, or the following weekend, and we'll have a stream there for the elite divisions, just like we did this past week with Crescendo, and that'll lead right into the 3 weeks of semifinals. So just kind of an update of what we're up to and what's coming up.
That was a good lead-in. Very good. You did that all in one breath, I think.
And while reading some of the comments that people are posting there, I guess I actually have the capacity to do this. Oh, look at that. Congrats on your Crash commentary. Well done. Without live scoring displayed, it's nearly unwatchable. Yeah, it's, I mean, when clearly we're aware of the fact that there's limitations, or, with what we're doing with the budget that we have, that kind of, to me, comes down to, is something better than nothing. And if your answer is no, then you don't have to watch it. I try to do as good of a job as I can with the running commentary of keeping you up to date of who's where and who you're seeing in the frame and on the camera. This was a team competition. So in addition to identifying the teams, I try to identify the mates, give you a little bit of background information about them, maybe something that I'll expect from one of the teams or one of the athletes based on what I know about them individually. But yeah, live scoring, it's one of those things, like they didn't have it for Taylor versus the World. And I think the content was still great there. We didn't have it this weekend and we probably won't have it. I mean, it's just
so
me.
expensive.
It's expensive. I mean, there are for Reps Ahead, we were able to integrate it, but that's a very simple format that we're overlaying it on top of with a still camera. And we're using a system that Phil with Reps Ahead has already created and can integrate with what we're doing to broadcast it on YouTube. So, we have when I'm on site there, it's me. I have a iPhone 15 on a gimbal. Chad creates those graphics. Rodri in Spain has set up a system where we're able to do that. And then obviously collaborating with the competition organizer to get all the workout details. So at least we have the graphics there on the workouts that we can pull on and off the screen, all the flows of the workouts, the athletes competing, and give you guys as much as we can with very little. So
to give AstroServe like a kind of an example when it comes to live scoring for the games, what they do is they have a scoring team, and each member of that team is assigned a lane. And they sit there with a cell phone, and they're basically hitting every time there's a rep. And so, think about that. That's like 10 lanes here, and it comes down to money and manning. When Brian does this stuff, it's like he does it by himself. He could ask for volunteers, but to do stuff like that. But it's just hard. Like I said, that's why the CrossFit is able to do live scoring, because they have volunteers to do that. That they're sit there and they're signed, and they're literally counting every single rep. And to do that at every competition, it's very hard. And the semifinals, same thing. They'll have volunteers on the scoring team. They'll keep track. So, yeah, probably.
Was the hat necessary? Not sure what hat is. The scoring hat, or was it this hat, Barkley? Yeah, but I look through, like, we've had I don't know, 13, 14,000 views across the workouts that we put up there. And that makes me happy to see. Is like, those are, first of all, some of the best teams in the world that are competing there. And the programming is great. The competition was fairly exciting. Several of the workouts were dramatic, and it's an opportunity for people to watch it. A lot of the comments that people leave are super positive. And then, every once in a while you see a comment that's like, hey man, you don't have to watch it.
Brian, you suck. Brian, you're terrible.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. It's like,
why are you letting your emotions get involved, Brian? Why are you crying, Brian? Shit, those type of comments. Yeah,
I did start tearing up at the end of that last workout. That one caught me off guard. In event 6 there. No. Yeah, and then in addition to the streams that we did on YouTube, the one on my head, I still don't know what. I did not just go leave to get a hat. I left the screen to go get water. I had made myself a glass of water because I just, otherwise my voice gets parched.
Barkley, stop it, Barkley! You're throwing him off. He's off his game.
And I left it on the counter over there. So I was like so sad, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to get it.
I missed Tears Chase cried the other day.
Yeah, I don't know what Chase cried about. I was the Ocean State team was doing the final workout. It was a male pairs leading it, and then paving the way for female pairs. And it was a chipper, and the final movement was a flip sled. And Christine Best went to do one rep, and something happened to her leg. I'm still kind of waiting to hear from them about if she's okay and what that was necessarily. But this Christine Middleton on the floor to do 18 flips of the 400-pound flip sled on her own, and she just did it. She didn't stop. She didn't question anything. She just did it. And Christine Middleton has been around CrossFit for a long time. If you're familiar with her, it's probably for some of her weightlifting accomplishments, but she's also been on several very high performing teams at semifinals, regionals, CrossFit games. She's a great role model for that community up in Rhode Island. And And I thought that the moment was just indicative of kind of what CrossFit's all about. Like, forget about competition. It's like when things go hard, when there's adversity, what are you going to do? Are you going to give up or are you going to persevere? And she didn't even second guess anything. Like, she just saw the job that needed to be done, realized that it was supposed to be two people splitting that work, and now it was up to her. And she buckled down and did it. And it made me emotional. Yeah.
It's all right, Brian. It's fine.
Dude, this workout on the turf there. I mean, JR has these workouts laid out really nicely, uses his space very well, but they were, traversing the floor from the dumbbells to the gymnastics, and then also the flip sleds were flipping back and forth, and there, 6 full lanes. You see the crowd on the right side. It's like right up against the turf there. So for Rick, Hope there, who's taking pictures of me, you're part of what you're trying to do is just not get in the way. And the race between Mayhem and Grit House all weekend long really was great. And then right there at the end in the final workout, it was a really close race to the finish as well, for some, the podium spots. So if you missed it, pretty exciting, fun to watch. That Mayhem Independence team, I think, is going to be pretty good. And the Grit House team, unfortunately, won't be competing this year, but man, they put on a good show this weekend.
Clear the wall. They'll head down to the dumb.
Sorry, Brian. I was trying to get to the part where Christine hurts herself, or trying to get the call, but
that's her all the way up against the wall on the right side.
Middleton,
yeah.
I mean, if there's any athlete that can do 18 of those pig flips, it's her. That's the athlete you want to get. I mean, she's a veteran. She's one of the strongest, if not the strongest, in certain lifts. When it comes to Olympic lifting in Middleton, a veteran. You can see there in the background. You see her teammates Helbig and Mattis going over to help Kristen Best. So hopefully everything is all right with her. So speaking of crying,
that's a great moment.
Yeah. If only we had pictures to, capture that moment. Sometimes those moments are best left not having captured in digital photo format. But let's, before we go into, I'm trying to stall here just in case a guest does show up, so I don't want to. So let's just jump right in the quarterfinals, okay?
Sure.
And that way we can end with, if he jumps on, that's great. And if not, then we can talk about Crash Crescendo and kind of like do a full recap of that. But let's talk about quarterfinals. Mm-hmm. Leaderboards, individual leaderboards. Are they finalized? Yes or no?
Are they finalized? Well, they were advertised as being finalized, but it appears that things can still change. So, I think that this week, a lot of people who were not aware of Mike Halpin, or the Known and Knowable account on Instagram, have become aware of him. He's been doing this for a while, but sometimes things take some momentum. That graphic he put up of the women from the games last year with all the gray outs, that is really cool. He said it's been picking up a ton of traction. And it's really, really, really well done. So you can see all the women that are not in the individual season this year for, one reason or another. But he also posted a story, I don't know, sometime within the last 30 minutes or 45 minutes of an update to the leaderboard today. And there's a lot of stories on here. He's been doing updates ever since the leaderboard was finalized. He mentioned some stuff about Dave Castro's week in review. He answers some fan questions. He pulls some history from previous online competitions dating back like 8 and 10 years ago, and gives some references, for example. But then this morning he posted like I said, within the last hour, he posted something about an update to the scoring today. And it's past the Northern Spirit stuff. And athletes may decline their invite. That's right. But this is it. Maybe the leaderboard is not final. And this is interesting because Brad Wilson actually was also competing at Crash Crescendo this weekend. He was on a team called CrossFit Grandview. If they had an injury on Sunday, otherwise they would have won the competition. They're a very good team. He's a very fit dude. I had heard about him maybe a couple of weeks ago. Some friends sent me some information. Friends of his sent some information on him, thinking that he had a chance to make the semis this year. He was in a qualifying position throughout the entire week. And Sunday morning, you're going to have to clarify for me what you thought Friday was the day for Ironically Fit. Athlete, maybe that's the date that athletes have to decline up until. Anyway, Brad was in a qualifying position on Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday morning we all wake up and he's no longer in a qualifying position. Apparently he received news overnight via email from the CrossFit team that he'd gotten a minor penalty on the first workout that dropped him down into the mid 40s in North America East, which is clearly outside the cut line. Then one of their teammates got injured and they had to withdraw from the competition. They lost the opportunity to earn some money there. So it was kind of a bad day for him. Really bad day, honestly. And then lo and behold, today, apparently there was an approval or something, a reversal of the score to some extent, that he's back inside the top 40. So not great, I would say. I don't know anything about why that's happened today. But yeah, I think on the one hand, you could say it's good if CrossFit is still doing whatever they're trying to do to get it right. But on the other hand, it's to publish that something is finalized and then have changes trickling in after the fact, even if it's only one that's affecting a qualifying spot, I don't think is a great look. So,
yeah. Well, then I would probably say that everything we do from here on out, until CrossFit makes a post or says something, is everything still unofficial. So to say, I mean, I think it's safe to say it basically, not that basically cover our ass when it comes to stuff like that. But yeah, when it comes down to it, though, unofficially, our quarterfinals worldwide champions are Yona Koski and Emma Lawson. So, congrats to them until it's official. And I think, yeah. So congratulations to those two, especially Yona. I know we talked about this before we came on the show. Yona Koski has put himself this season, when we've talked about it, but this season, if things work out the way he wants it, it could be considered probably one of the best seasons from start to beginning, from start to finish, by a male competitive athlete.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because this is now the fourth year that we have the quarterfinals. And so it's the fourth opportunity for the athletes to have 4 stages of the game season as data points. 2019 and 20 are unique. And prior to that, there were 3 open regionals games. And sure, there were athletes like Fraser, Froning, Toomey, Saunders, Briggs, that had some really impressive seasons. Some of them even maybe winning all parts of the season or doing damn near that. But in terms of the quarterfinals era, to have, if you're looking at the men's side, to win the open and the quarterfinals, he's the first to do it for amongst male athletes over these 4 years. By no means is it easy to win the European semifinal, but Yona Koski certainly could do that. And although I think it's extremely unlikely that he'll win the games, his kind of moniker for this season is that he's chasing the podium. And coming off of a season where we had no swimming at the CrossFit Games and he still managed to finish 6th, it's not it may seem like a far-fetched claim given the likes of Roman Krennikov, Jeff Adler, Ricky Garrard, Pat Vellner, Justin Medeiros, Brent Fikowski, Dallin Peppers that are out there in the world. But I mean, this guy's beaten them both through 2 stages of the season so far. He's coming off his best game season. He's got 10 years of experience in the sport, and we've seen that that's not necessarily a limiter. He's 30 years old, and he seems to be performing as good as ever.
Yeah, he's hitting that 30-year-old men, CrossFit Games athlete peaking type moment. Vellner, Fikowski, even Adler. Adler, what 32 maybe?
I guess Koski will be 29 this year. Adler will be 30 at the games.
So they have, correct. He isn't even 30.
Just freaking crazy, man. He was at the
I know.
2014 games at 19 years old.
Year old. Yep, 19. That's what a lot of people, I think, like someone like him, like even Lauren Fisher, she started Brooke Wells. I mean, Brooke Wells isn't even 30 yet. She's been competing since she was, at the game since she was 19. It's funny how BKG is another prime example. He's been around forever, and I think we're going to get to that point where they kind of like, once these athletes are stepping away, that we kind of take for granted how great they were and how long they were. I mean, if you look at other sports, football, for example, or basketball, a 10-year career is quite amazing. But now you're saying these are the fittest people. So what they're doing compared to other sports is probably more stressful on their body than any other sport, like professional sport. For them to do this 10 years and just continue on doing it, it's amazing.
CJ, there has to be a better way to get to the games. The 40 men and women who made the games in the prior year should earn a bye to semis. You don't need to prove your fitness online. I actually don't have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, because I've heard this idea thrown around at different stages, and sometimes be like, well, what if it was the top 10, or what if it was the top 20 or whatever? But it's like, well, who's finishing in the bottom 10 at the games? Who's finishing in the bottom 20 at the games? And a lot of times it's, not all the time, but a lot of times it's the representative from Africa, a couple, one or two from Asia, depending on if Roman's competing. None of the women have cracked into the top 20 yet from Asia. Usually, with the exception of Guy, it's the athletes from South America. And usually one or two, well, depending on the year, it can be a couple from Oceania. But in those regions, like giving a bye to between 1 and 3 athletes to go to the semifinals it's yeah. Can you imagine a semifinal that didn't have, the top, that didn't have Ricky and Jay Crouch and Bailey Martin at it if they wanted to compete in the season? Like all of Australia and Oceania would be like, this is ridiculous. Like, why are we even having this competition? The 3 best guys got penalized in this for a step up and they're not here. Like, I mean, it would be laughable. And everyone would know that the semifinal was less than it needed to be. So in those small regions, I think absolutely giving a bye to those athletes would be practical even. In the bigger regions, now you're talking about over a quarter of the field at times, right? Because in last year we had 11 or 12 qualifiers at some of the regions on the men and women's side in Europe and North America East. And I think North America West was 9 and 10. So you're looking at, about 25 or 30% of the field in those regions to get a bye. And that's a little, maybe that's a little bit different. Clearly CrossFit doesn't want to have more than 40 athletes at those semifinals based on the decisions they've made this year. But at the same time, of the athletes who are competing in the season, I haven't looked at it that thoroughly yet, but of the athletes that are competing in the season, it's a very small number that didn't make it through to the semifinal anyway. And I think that most of those athletes are in that same category that I would mention about Jay Crouch or Ricky Garrard is like, yeah, the fact that Paige Powers isn't going to the semifinal, it's like nobody's like, well, I don't know if she's really good enough to be there anyway. Everyone knows she's good enough to be there anyway. The CrossFit Games team knows that she's good enough to be there anyway, and the competition at the semifinal is better with her as a part of it. I'm kind of like, I actually spoke to her this weekend because she was at Crescendo, supporting the Mayhem teams there, and she had a great attitude. I was so impressed with the way that she represented herself and the way that she spoke about that situation. And you can think historically about athletes that are clearly fit enough to be at the CrossFit Games or that didn't make it. I think the best example is probably Sam Briggs in 2014, coming off of the championship year in 2013. She goes to the Europe Regional or whatever it was called at that time, and she didn't do well enough on the handstand walking event to make it to the games. And that year at the games for the women's side, don't want to take anything away from Camille or Annie or Cara or any of those athletes that competed there, but there was like this little stigma about it. It's like, man, like the woman that won last year is in the prime of her career and she couldn't do a handstand walk well enough to be here. Are we really finding the fittest person here, fittest person on earth? And people can have their own opinions about that. From a perspective of an athlete like Paige Powers, she can look back at that and say it didn't deter Sam from having a great career. It was a setback, it was an obstacle, it was a challenge, and it forced her to be better. And look at what she was able to do over the next 8 to 10 years after that. Yeah. But that was at a live competition. That wasn't in a field of thousands of people where, the scrutiny of a decision that's made by someone who's sitting behind their computer, trying really hard, by the way, to do the right thing based on the rules that they've been given and the instructions that that's been delivered to them. And the penalty for doing bad in a live competition is a lot less severe than it is for getting a penalty in an online competition when you know that there's not the opportunity for every athlete who's going to end up having a better score than you to receive the same level of scrutiny. The thing that's, and like, maybe you can be like, Dave Castro said that next year is going to be different. Why wasn't this year different? I mean, we already know what happens at quarterfinals. This is year number 4. We saw a problem with this new standard of the GHD and the hands being inside or outside the first year. We saw the problem with the shuttle runs. We saw the problem with the V-ups. We know that they can't review all the videos. We're not expecting them to review all the videos. We're expecting them to make some kind of a changes to their season that helps avoid these problems instead of continuously having them year after year after year. And
but the argument is that there was a change in terms of expanding that quarterfinal field, which I think created more problems. So I don't know.
Oh man. I mean, I'm not that tone, Brian. You can interpret it however you want. I feel like I'm just stating some facts and observations based on what we've seen. As obviously, it's great that they want to make some changes. Dave missed 18 months of this period of time where we've had the quarterfinals existing. Maybe by returning back in there, he'll be able to see and make the changes that are necessary. We'll see, but it's clear that a lot of people are frustrated by what happened this year. And I would say, he makes the point. Quarterfinals is a relatively new part of the season. This is a relatively young sport. Those things are absolutely true, but I think that there have been enough lessons learned over the course of the first 3 years that this felt predictable. And I think that there's others. I believe Chase and Bill are either talking about it now or we're talking about it on a previous show that they saw this coming. We saw this coming, and we were hopeful that there would be less of this year, less controversy, and it's one could argue there's the most that there's ever been. I don't really know, but it's frustrating to have the same part of the season have the same frustrations over and over again. And like we spoke about on a previous show, to me, it detracts from what the focus should be, which is on the athletes. So that's where we're going to try to keep our focus today.
Yeah. So back to the athletes.
Back to the athletes. Thank you.
Yeah, to kind of we started off down this rabbit hole talking about Koski and, obviously the change in the season, but historically, again, he's the only male to both win open and quarterfinals, which bodes well for him going into semifinals, possibly in the games, because historically, this has only happened 2 other times by 2 women, Mal O'Brien in 2023 and Tia in 2021. They both won the open quarterfinals. Mal, a little bit different, started off strong last year, open quarterfinals, and obviously withdrew and to take time off.
But the similarities are that she was coming off of her best performance at the games. She had swept the first 2 parts of the seasons, and expectations were high, and conversations were very much focused on what's the top end potential for her this year.
Mm-hmm.
And can she win the games? Can she beat Laura? How much can she win by? And it's like, maybe we should be having similar questions about Yona Koski. These are really impressive performances. I've spoken to some of the best athletes in the world, and they're like, yeah, man, what Yona's done through the first 2 stages is exceptional. And Wad Zombie, yeah, you're just sneaking just slightly ahead of us here. But right behind him, and really the only athlete within striking distance in terms of points there on the leaderboard is Jeff Adler.
Yep.
And we've been saying it about Adler over and over and over again. It doesn't matter what stage of the season. It doesn't matter who is judging him. It doesn't matter what the tasks are. The guy is good across the board. He's really, really good. He's got open wins. He's got quarterfinals, top 5s up and down the wazoo. He's got semifinals performances, and he's got games performances that back it up. And off season as well, so it's I've been getting asked more and more recently about the CrossFit games on the men's side and who I think is going to win. I haven't really been able to settle on a pick for that, but If you're a guy that's saying it's Roman's year, it's Ricky's year, like just realize that Jeff Adler is going to be there. He's going to be in the mix, and he's gonna put up a fight. He may, it's obviously it's incredibly hard to repeat, and the men's field is super stacked at the top, but I believe he absolutely has the potential to do it, and he continues to show his class across the year, across every form of competition.
Yeah. I mean, just look there. I mean, the difference between quarterfinals, Adler versus Roman, it's almost double in terms of points.
Yeah, and I would say like a majority of the points that he's stealing from Roman are in the straight up gymnastics test.
Yep.
But I look at that score from Roman, 828, and I think
I'm
about
impressed by
the
that.
Jason Hopper score of 819, and similarly to when I was comparing Taylor Self with Jason, and when I was comparing Adler to Roman, like I would expect Jeff and Taylor to beat Jason and Roman on this workout. It would be interesting if we just stripped that test down to the top 50 guys in the world or in the world rankings, or the guys on Barclays that are 90 plus on the rankings, and see where that kind of stacks up, because I still think that those performances from Jason and Roman are exceptional for guys that are that big on that workout.
Yes.
And if you're talking about a semifinal, we could potentially have a workout that's that specialized to be just gymnastics throughout the board. But we're much more likely to get one of those at the games. And if we do get something like that at either the semis or the games, it's, regardless of how good they are at it, there's a good chance that it's their worst workout. But their worst workout for Roman, his worst workout has included ring muscle ups at every competition that he's competed at for the most part since he's returned. Last year's games was the first time that wasn't the case. And it was sad because it was also the workout where he broke his foot. But I think that he's showing trajectory of improving in that realm. And now that he's starting to build up some volume of time at Mayhem, some volume of time with Facundo, and some trust there through competition experience, if he's closing that gap on that high skill gymnastics, that's a really positive if you're a Roman Krennikov fan.
Yeah. I wonder if Iona is hoping that Henrik is next to him in every lane when he competes at semifinals, because
Iona is also the 9th highest point scorer in CrossFit Games history. I've never actually seen that stat before. So this would be basically taking the cumulative points earned of every CrossFit Games athlete. Of course, you would have to start doing that, I think, in 2010 or 11, because
when they changed it.
Yeah, prior to that, they had different scoring systems. And it's kind of Thomas says he has a doc with all the points in history. I would be curious how you accounted for those early years. And of course, it's like dramatically skewed by certain things, because number of workouts, if you competed in 2020, it's a massive advantage if you made it to the top 5, because you had like 1,200 extra points opportunities that even the other 25 athletes in the field didn't have that year. I would say it would be more, I would be even more interested than, I mean, total points is cool because it speaks to longevity, but maybe Thomas, you could also run a study that's like total, like the highest percentage of possible points earned as another way to think about it. Anyway, yeah, that's very cool. Did host to make the cut. He had a great rookie games last year. He did make the cut. He had a great semifinal or quarterfinals, excuse me. I think that a lot of people were concerned about him in the quarterfinals, and we expressed the potential for him to not make a semifinal because of potentially one kind of workout or one specific movement that could be included, and that there could be a lot of athletes in clearly a deep European men's field that could prevent that from happening. We did have workout 3, and he still managed to make it through. He ended up finishing 18th in Europe, and like those other guys that we were talking about that are some of those bigger boys, a time at 8:37, not too shabby for a guy who's, I don't know, 6'3" and 220 pounds.
Yeah, 190 centimeters. Well, let's we didn't get a chance to do this because we're kind of waiting for the leaderboard to, I guess, finalize, but we don't know what that's going to be, if even it is finalized. But we didn't talk too much about the who's coming out of Europe, and I know in the next couple of weeks we'll preview some of the semifinals the week that it happens with your picks and who we like. But let's kind of look at the Europe men, for example. We already talked about Koski. Victor Hoffer, I mean, impressive. We've seen this kid since he was a 19-year-old in Dubai, and the maturity and how much he's grown and as an athlete over the last 2 years is just it's crazy. It's crazy. It's almost like it's very similar to me, almost kind of similar to what, like, maybe kind of like Emma Lawson, but not as a teenage athlete, but just that progression, and that confidence. And then now people are talking that he's the next best European athlete out there. Your thoughts on Hoffer?
Yeah, I mean, he's in this small category of men this year who have not qualified for the CrossFit Games yet, but seem to have all of the requisite skills and fitness required to make that happen this season. I think that when you start to see picks coming out for the European semifinal, well, first of all, we have to know how many spots are going to be allocated. I think it'll almost definitely be either 11 or 12 spots for the men in Europe. If I had to guess, I would say 11. But we'll see once they do the hunt distribution methods. And spots are going to be at a premium just when you're looking at even just the top 10 qualifiers, and forget about Hoffer, who has not made it before. Coming into this, you have Koski, Gudmundsson, Fiebig, and Ulda Supanex amongst those top 10 that are really highly probable picks to make the games based on history. And then Lazar Jukic was in I think the second or third spot prior to the penalty, and you could throw his name in the mix. So about half of the spots are likely already accounted for. Other people will argue that Henrik Apalainen should be in that category. Others would argue that Jelle Hoste is going to be really difficult to unseat from a semifinal spot. And as is the case in North America, basically you're going to have 3 to 4 spots available of the non-usual suspects, and 4 to 5 times as many people that are valiant candidates to potentially take those spots. So staying inside the top 10 there, besides Victor Hoffer, we have, Anjol Akai is the name that actually jumps out the most to me. This guy, I believe this guy has taken the next step. From everything we've seen in the off season, I had a chance to train with him. I got a chance to kind of see what his lifestyle is like. And I know that there's people that'll say, oh, you have proximity bias. You're spending too much time there. It's like, no, proximity bias would be going to spend a weekend with someone and then saying that they're the fittest man on earth, or training with the same room as someone for proximity bias. Let's talk about Nika Maizaradze, for example. When I met Nika in Istanbul, and I met his team of people, his friends who came to watch him compete there, and he's dominating the competition, and they're all saying he's going to the games, top 10 at the games. That's proximity bias. Those are his friends. Those are people in his corner. Those are people who see him train all the time. What I try to do is get into those situations as frequently as possible with as many athletes as possible. And for a lot of athletes, it's only in competition. Yeah. But when you do have a chance to actually spend some time training with high-level athletes, even if it's for a day or two, and over the course of the period of time, you get to train with Roman Krennikov, you get to train with Don Pepper, you get to train with Anjol Akai, you get to train, all of these different athletes just on the men's side that I've been able to train with and or see train over the past year, then you start to pick up on some nuances about lifestyle, about preparation, about movement quality, about mental fortitude. And Anjol Akai, I think, is I think he's a good bet to make the games this year, but it won't be easy. If amongst the athletes that have not made it in Europe, I would put him at the top of the list of the athletes most likely to make it, ahead of a guy like Victor Hoffer or Colin Bossard or Nika Maizaradze.
Wow. Okay. Well, like you said, I mean, I agree with that. I would probably put Hoffer above Anjol, just based on talent. Not to say that Anjol isn't talented. He's probably out of the people that haven't made the games, he's definitely one of the most talented. But I think Hoffer has probably the most upside. And I think the only reason why is because Anjol is, he's been trying so hard, and he's been doing this a little bit longer, and is yet to kind of, break through. But it's very similar to, it's very similar to what his teammate Fabian did. I mean, the parallels are pretty, I don't know, they're pretty similar just Fabian did it a little bit quicker than Annual. I think they're
Well,
on the
I mean,
same-
Fabian's a year older than Agnol is,
Mhm.
but I think he has more than a year extra experience of trying to do
Sure.
this stuff. And he did have the big breakthrough last year. We've seen that the Spanish community is on the ascendancy. I think are there 8 men in this field?
Mhm.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, the last guy in is Spanish still. So eight men in Spain out of 40. I saw someone that was asking about Mayhem dominating in the East in terms of representative, which we can look at. But
Sure.
8 out of 40 men coming from Spain. They only have 2 women, but they also have a huge contingency of teams that are competing there. At our depth of team look in a couple of weeks ago with Simon from Krieger and Oslo. And yes, Agnol and Fabian are both with the training culture. They train together a majority of the time. It's a very strong program there. I actually did a podcast completely in Spanish with their head programmer and one of the owners of their competition there. That's how you say Simon in Norwegian. Yes, Heidi.
Yep.
And oh man. Anyway, yes, Agnol and Fabian trained together. I think that it's been while actually completely very beneficial for both of them in that regard. They're learning a lot from each other. They have a consistent push, but there doesn't seem to be a high level of tension between the two. I've actually asked Agnol about it. I said, when Fabian made the games last year, what was it like for you emotionally? And he said it was bittersweet because I wanted that. But I was also elated for him because he's worked so hard and no one deserves it as much as Fabi. So he has he's kind of on both sides of that coin. Anyway, Agnol and Victor Hofer, if you're looking for people who are likely to make the games that haven't previously in Europe, I think they're a great pair of picks, but they're not the only athletes by any means that I would be looking at. As I mentioned, we've talked about Nika Mazaradze. The kid has, when I'm looking at athletes like this and I see a lot of potential across the board physically, then I think about what about competition experience? That's where I give Agnol a little bit of an edge over Hofer, and that's where I would give Hofer an edge over Mazaradze. And I do think when the margins are small and the pressure is high at a semifinal, that counts a lot because more than likely something's not going to go your way. It's probably going to happen on day 1 or day 2. It could happen both days. It doesn't mean your weekend's over. And in this field, there's going to be like someone in a qualifying spot going into the final event that's out of a qualifying spot when that last event ends. And when, keeping that in mind, being able to set aside an inconvenience, a bad call, a mistake that you made, an execution or something like that. I think those are the things that can make the difference there. So, and then the other guy that I think we just have to throw into that mix, and these are just guys that have never been to the games, is Colin Bossard. And obviously he's gotten some conversation, but he had a great year last year, just barely missing. And then he made some waves in the offseason in Europe, having good performance in Madrid. And he's been strong through the first 2 parts of the season. So all those guys are in the field, but dude, this European men's field, top to bottom, is just insane. There's I think I was looking through it this morning with the current guys that are in qualifying position. There's 2 guys that I don't really know much about. And if you know something about Jaime Gonzalez, I've asked people in Spain, and I haven't gotten almost no one in Spain knows anything about him, or Jules Castor out of France. Love to learn about those 2 guys. But everyone else on this list is extremely talented, extremely fit, has a lot of either potential or already have accomplished things in competition. This is going to be an insane semifinal field.
Okay, if you had to pick one name out of the top 40 here that we have, dark horse in terms of making the first games outside of the usual suspect, dark horse, who would it be?
The dark horse for sure, Mikko Lilliorg. Mostly because I think a lot of people don't know who he is. Actually saw he was all the way up in 7th place in the qualifier. He got a penalty that dropped him down to the 60s. He got an appeal overturned that got him back into the 20s.
Well, no wonder he got a penalty. He had his freaking Kevin Jers judging him. You think he did that on purpose?
Kevin, yeah, they work out together all the time. Those are the 2 fittest guys in Estonia. And I saw Mikko compete at Turin Tuomiopäivä last year in Finland. I was like, dude, who are you, man? He's like, well, you would have known who I was last year, except I couldn't do crossover single unders. So I went back and looked here. Well, I'll just tell you guys real quick from his quarterfinals performance in 2023 in Europe. He had finishes of like 7th, 49th, 75th, 277th, and then 403rd on that workout. I think I actually had done more work than him on that workout with the crossover single unders. I'm not sure if he got any penalties or not, but the kid's young. Kid's fit. He's very driven. He's strong. He can. He's got a swimming background. I know it won't be tested at semis, but of a guy who's lesser known that I think has a chance to make it, it would be him.
Yeah. Let's switch over to the women's side. Women. All right. Gabby just doing Gabby things. Her and Laura, obviously doing the workouts together at Glass House. They're in, believe they're in Hungary. Yeah, they've been doing. Yeah, Gabby moved over to Hungary to train at CrossFit Glass House with Laura. 1-2.
Yeah, and really, when Gabby and Laura, we know who they are. They're the top. They're the class of the field in Europe. In as far as the women go, they're the only two female athletes in the women's field. Maybe Karen Freyova if she has a perfect run this year, but otherwise, Gabby and Laura are the only two that I think will make the top 10 at the CrossFit Games. Mm-hmm. But in general, when you look at the women's field, and like there are some good women down the list, but just look at the top 10 names there. Every one of those 10 names could easily make the games. Like the top 10 coming out of semis could be the same as the top 10 coming out of quarters. Mm-hmm. This is a really elite group of women. Manon Angonista, Matal, Emma McQuaid, Fuliano, Claudia Gluck. She's more in that camp of the Victor Hoffers, Colin Bossarts, who hasn't done it yet. But we saw what she did in Dubai. She was, knocking on the door last year. Dahlstrom missed the games by one spot last year. She's made it several times prior. Freyova and Elena Karatala, who usually Elena's the one of the top 10 that you might say there's the opportunity to knock someone out, because she has had these ups and downs, especially in live competition. Sometimes she's great, sometimes she's not as great. But that's a tough top 10 to break into.
Yeah,
Sylvia Garcia did make it, CJ. She's sitting in 12th. And she's had a great season so far. So
yeah, really good season. I mean, starting off with Madrid, didn't do too great at Dubai, but it was for her just getting competition experience. But no, that's impressive, finishing 12th overall.
And then the thing is, as good as that top 10 is, I don't think there's a ton of room for opportunity. However, with just looking at the next page we have here, and it doesn't stop here. Amy Kringle seems to be on the ascendancy. Jennifer Muir seems to be on the ascendancy. Andrea Solberg had her best competition of her career in Dubai. Mm-hmm. Those are just three names in this next group, along with Turi Helgadottir, obviously one of the veterans of European CrossFit, who's going to be, hunting a return to the CrossFit Games. And then we have some even younger athletes, and I know you want to talk about them, PC. Lucy McGonigal, Bergos Bjorn's daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Bjorn's daughter is kind of made a name for herself, just coming off of, I guess, Wadapalooza. Yeah, she's competed in the games as a teen, but as we know, teen athletes, unless you win and show that capacity to compete with the older women, they kind of just, they're just there. But she has shown that capacity and shown it at Wadapalooza, and she's done. And here she is. Her 22nd. Lucy is what, 15th? Yeah, 15th.
Yeah, she's up there. Magnon seems to be improving at Houde's camp. Absolutely. Yeah. I believe 3 of the 4 athletes that he had out there, or maybe 4 or 5, Turi, Magnon, and Yella all made it and all did very well. Tommy Pieri did not make it on the men's side, which was, I think, surprising to some. But yeah, Andre Houde is running a very tight ship over there, and his athletes seem to be thriving. This comment from Monica Bunce is, if CrossFit is going to take 25%, should elite athletes have their own leaderboard? It's something that I have been talking about for years now, and I've suggested to people who have the potential to make that change. There's a variety of different ways that I've thought about and brainstormed that it could be done, and hasn't happened yet, but I do think that it's worth the CrossFit Games team revisiting that idea. PC, this one's for you. Was Burgos at the Crown?
Yes, she was.
I think she get
won.
second or third. She won. Both of the Icelandic won out there.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
She was a friend of the week.
And scrolling down to the next group, you're looking at the exact same two names that I was looking at in this group of women as far as the bottom half of the qualifiers at this point go. Sarah Sigmundsdóttir and Rebecca Widdesen. A lot of people have asked me this. I don't think I've asked you. What do you think is the upside potential, the ceiling for Sarah Sigmundsdóttir this year?
This year, I think it's tremendous. I think especially when she gets that semifinal and she has her coach where, I think last week we'll find out for sure on Thursday, but last we spoke, Justin Kotler, her coach from Underdogs, is planning on making that trip to Europe and coach her. First time coaching her at a live event. He was helping her out last year. Just kind of helping out. He wasn't officially her coach, was helping her out when she kind of had that like kind of breakdown in semifinals. But I think how Justin basically got her past that and coached her the rest of the way is what kind of sealed the deal for Sarah. Because you and I both know Sarah's when it comes to coaches, she has to have that trust, and she honestly trusts Justin Kotler. And I think in a live competition with Kotler on her side, motivating her, just being the coach that we all know that Kotler can be, I think that's going to be an X factor. When she's feeling down on herself, she's going to be there. He's going to be there. He's a coach she's had just about every type of coach, but Kotler's he's different than any other coach she has. And I think she'll respond to that because she is an emotional person.
I agree with you. I think she's got the potential to make it back to the CrossFit Games this year.
Yeah.
I wanted to set the stage by saying that's not going to be easy. That when we look at those top 10, and we can expect them to have, again, 10 to 12 maybe spots, that's going to be the range. I hope it's closer to 12. I do think that Europe can support 12 in both divisions. I don't know if they'll get them or not, but they certainly have that class. A big thing for athletes like this is what's your capacity to express intensity when it's the time to do it. I was having a conversation at the gym yesterday and here in Charlotte with some of the guys on Taylor's team, Aaron Dugas, Travis Brault, and Bryson Del Monte, and then my buddy Nikita, and we were talking about this thing about just being settled in your life. Mm-hmm. Sarah made a decision to move back to Dubai. She loves the weather there. She loves a friends group that she has there. Training environment there is positive. There's a PT there that she has great relationship with that keeps her body feeling good. He's one of the best in the sport. He'll likely be there, he'll definitely will be there in France with her as well. And I think that the fact that her life is she's taking control of her life in that regard, to be in the environment that she wants to be in more often than not, makes training more accessible for her. And what I mean by that is that she's getting the most out of it every day. And I think that when it comes to the semifinal, even though she has had, like, her and Widdesen are a little different in this regard, where she has had a lot of success in online competitions in the past, in addition to in-person competitions. But at the stage that she's in her career right now, I'm not worried about Sarah's performance online. Just get there and let's see what happens when she's there. And I think she's going to be in the top 15 no matter what. And hopefully, she's able to fight for one of those top maybe 10 or 12 spots to the games. Widdesen is an athlete that it's like, give me her in live competition. I was more worried about her than I was Yella Hoste making it through the online qualifiers. And now that she's made it through, after what we saw from her last year at semis, I was still like, I'm not 100% sure. But after what we saw at Wadapalooza, I'm saying, yeah, this woman in live competition cannot be forgotten, cannot be ignored. So I think that she'll be, in the mix as well for a game spot once again. Okay.
Question there. Between Sarah and Rebecca and Lucy, which one of those three gets a game spot?
Lucy McGonigal?
Yeah.
In order, I would probably go with Widdesen, Sigmundsdóttir, McGonigal.
Okay.
If you made me do that, which you have.
I did make you do that. Yeah. Kind of looking down the list past that. Norte Blaker is a name that stands out. We've seen a lot of her. She's probably like the most notable name that I see, and then Ella Wilkinson, who just, what a past week has been for her. She went from being top 5 to top 10 to out, and now she looks like, according to this,
she's on the cut line.
on the cut line. I mean, yeah. So, and we said this initially, like when we looked at that leaderboard, and like kind of what you said with the Spanish men, is like we see a lot of names from the UK that we normally don't see, and and they're young. Georgia's 27, but I mean, you look at Ella, 24. We know that Jennifer Muir she's 22, I believe.
She's 24. Amy Kringle's 25.
Yeah.
Connie Easby, 20. I don't know a ton about her. Mday Gooch is 39, so she's representing the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So I think six women from the UK,
which is impressive.
Yeah,
for the UK. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, they've had some good teams, but they haven't had a ton of great success on the individual side. And it's nice to see a good contingency of women spanning, three different generations there, representing them at the semifinal, or at least having the opportunity to.
All right. Same question. Dark horse.
I would say dark horse in Europe. I mean, we talked about a lot of women right there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna try to find one that we didn't mention.
I have mine.
Yours is probably Miriam.
Nope.
Okay. It's an athlete that we haven't mentioned at all yet for you.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned her name, but we didn't talk.
I mean, I would say of all the women that we haven't talked about yet, you probably have to look at Linda Kiesman. As close as she was last year, she's been kind of flirting with the top 10 in a European semifinal for a few years now. And she's
training think tank athlete.
Yeah. And she's, been fairly consistent. And, when I look at Linda Kiesman and I look at her performances there in the semifinals, the quarterfinals, excuse me, I see a lot of things that I like.
I don't. I see questionable judging.
Brian Clapp.
Clapp instead. Yeah. I'm just kidding.
No, over 60 reps on the clean and jerk, approaching a 10-minute time on the gymnastics test for the women. That's excellent. Nearly 200, over 215 reps on the first workout. It's very good. A little bit lacking on the just raw capacity test. But I think that doing well on 1, 3, and 4 here. It reminds me a little bit of a Taylor Self, and Taylor's another guy, different region, obviously male compared to female, that I think is going to do really well at the semifinals. So maybe Linda Kiesman. Who do you got?
Amy Kringle. Yeah,
absolutely. I think she'll be in the mix for sure.
Yeah, I mean, typically, there's a workout at semifinals that she'll knock out of the park. Usually, a workout with burpees or something like that. But I'm really impressed by the strength number she's put up. I mean, she's not someone we think of in terms of strength capacity, but her to get 62 reps, 15th in Europe. I mean, that's impressive. And we've brought this up before about her. She I don't know. A lot of people may look at her as like a fitness influencer versus an athlete, and she's trying really hard. She wants to make the games, and she's trying to dispel those. And I think, she obviously has the capacity to do that. I mean, 30th, 33rd, 12th, 15th across all 4 tests. That's pretty well rounded for her. I mean, if you like some of these other athletes, they'll have one that's kind of just out of the block, like 80th and a bunch of, 20th and 12th. But I really like her in terms of, being that dark horse. And then I kind of have to give a shout out to Andrea Solberg. You mentioned her, her best, she's someone that's no stranger to the games and competition, but we're probably seeing the best version of her. And I think she's leveled up. She's been, for the first time in a couple of years, she's been able to dedicate full time to CrossFit. And she's given this, not maybe a last final run, but a really, the next couple of years, given this a real 100% run at becoming a games athlete. So
yeah, and this is, now you can start to see some of the depth of Europe. Emily Lundberg, T. Kane says, is a dark horse. Great performance in Madrid last year, sneaking into a podium spot, coming off making the games on a team last season. That was very emotionally rewarding for her. She's been around the sport for a long time, but she's clearly still has it. So yes, another name that could certainly ruffle some feathers in Lyon.
Yeah, but I know I surprised you with not going with Miriam, but I think I think she does have a few weaknesses, and I think they'll kind of get exposed at semifinals. But I do think that she'll fit in right. She'll fit in fine with that semifinal field. Again, she's used to competing at High Rocks events live with competition. That's not going to be an issue with her whatsoever.
What semifinals are you going to? I am going to go to France, West Coast Classic, and Knoxville, Tennessee. I've booked flights for all of them. I have not booked accommodations. If anyone looking to provide some accommodations at any of those locations, let me know. Patrick, where are you going to be?
Right now, I need to book my flight to Korea, so Far East Throwdown, and then East and West North America. So
okay. Since you're going to Korea and I won't see you before then, I think I'm going to mail you something.
Oh, Jesus.
I was going to give it to you in person, but it'd be nice to take it to Korea.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. Do you want to talk about North America East and West? I think we've talked about them a lot the last couple of weeks. Or do you want to kind of maybe talk about some of the other countries we haven't really, talked about? It's your call.
Up to you. I mean, I think that we're gonna do specific shows prior to every semifinal. The Tuesday before, we'll do a show where I get to my picks and my evaluation for the fields in a more depth. Maybe we'll have more information by then. But I know that some of those others haven't been getting as much attention. So why don't we go over there? Pick one. Asia, Africa, South America, whatever.
We had our Oceania correspondent and expert on last week, and she dived in there. But I did want to recognize that Caitlin Van Ziel did win her appeal, thank God. And like we said then, it's like if she wins her appeal, she'll be in third. She is in third. And as you can see, that separation, it's basically those three women at that Oceania, with the possibility of someone like Julia Hanford or Brianna Chalice, Gemma Hawk, Georgia Pryor. They could compete, but I think it's pretty much set with those three women.
Those are definitely the ones to beat. But I don't know. I have a feeling that one of them's not going to make it.
Yeah, I do too. It seems like it happens every year in Oceania where someone, but I don't know. I'm just excited that
basically I think of you listed out some of those other names. I think one of those athletes are good enough that someone, and if I was going to put money on someone, I would pick either Julia or Georgia Pryor this year, are going to be just string together a good competition weekend and are going to be within striking distance on the final day. And we'll see. I mean, I think I said it last week. I'm expecting something like Emily DeRoy last year for someone just to kind of sneak in there, mix it up, and steal a spot.
Yeah.
Maddie Sturt, but yes, I do think that Maddie Sturt for me, she's the favorite there. If I was going to pick one athlete to say that's where I was going to put my money on an athlete to make it to the games, I'm not saying that she's necessarily outright fitter than Grace Walton, but she has the experience. So, I do think that in environments like that, going back and study the history of this sport, when you've made it before, when you've been close, and not made it a couple of times, and Maddie has had all those experiences. So there's nothing that's going to happen that weekend that's going to throw her off. Plus, I don't know if any athletes have made a better change to their training environments than her and Jay Crouch this year.
Yeah, 100%.
Not any, not every training athlete is going to be a perfect harmony. But what Jay and Maddie have going on with Proven right now, that feels special to me. And I think that both those athletes are primed to really thrive this season.
I think, and much love to Rob Forte, because, obviously they were training under Rob, and Rob has been, a mentor and older brother, to them. But for them to kind of break away and seek that out with Tia and Shane, it looks like they have something really cool. I think looks like Tia and Madeline, and it might be because of the Oceania connection, and they all feel familiar. They can, I don't know, just feel comfortable around each other. But
there were some, some pictures that were going around online because they'd spent that time over there at in Nashville. And one of the pictures I really liked, it's like Tia's in the foreground, Maddie's 2 steps behind her running, and way back in the distance, you see Jay. And of course, we have no idea what they were doing or what, why he was back there. But I thought it was funny.
Yeah, but I'm excited to see what Grace. I mean, Grace is, she's that one person. I mean, I know I've said this, like the comparison with Ellie Turner and stuff like that. But I think Grace, she's doing everything she can in terms of live competition. She does have a win over Madeline Sturt, a couple of years ago. But it was a different Madeline Sturt. But this is a different Grace Walton. So it'll be really interesting to see those two go head to head and in a live competition with so much on the line. And then, of course you have like a veteran like Caitlin Van Zyl, who will be pushing them in some workouts, and as well as the rest of the field. So if I'm in the Oceania region, yes, you lose Tia. Cara looks like she's probably done with individual competition. I know she's doing team this year. But from a women's field, you should be very happy if you're an Oceania fan, because you have so many young superstars, people like Grace Walton, Julia Hanford, and Georgia Pryor, to name like a few.
Dude, maybe even this girl Daisy McDonald.
Yeah,
she's only 22. Mm-hmm. She had a great quarterfinal. I think I'm thinking of the right. Yeah, she's been at the last 2 semifinals as well. So big young contingency of Oceanic women. And I think ironically Fit is talking about Bailey Martin here.
Yeah, correct. Who Bailey Martin is. Yeah, he's probably set to, Bailey's going to have a good year, I think. I think he's going to really impress.
We'll flip over to the men real quick as long as we're here. We'll just look at them, because it's a similar situation where you have 3 guys that,
kind of separate themselves.
I don't think anybody would say that these guys are not top 20 candidates at the games, and potentially all in the top 10, even if they have a great weekend. And their scores reflect that relative to the rest of the region there. This is a little different though, whereas Maddie hasn't made it in a while. Grace and Caitlin have never made it. These 3 guys know what it takes, and they've, Jay Crouch, and this guy's, he's like unbeatable at semifinals. Ricky Garrard is not, if he's healthy, nobody else of the 38 guys that are going there expecting that they're going to take a spot from him. And you really shouldn't be thinking that way about Bailey Martin either. It's a little unfortunate. We'll see how the distributions work out. There are a ton of good guys over there. A couple of them are right on this page: Peter Ellis, Luke DeYoung, Zach Thomas, at the very least, that I would love to see what any of those 3 guys could do at the CrossFit Games. But this year, it seems really unlikely that we're going to get a chance to see that.
Yeah. So let's jump over to Asia.
Who you got, men or women?
Men. We'll go men. Start with the Russian.
Yeah, men's going to be wide open. Okay, so first of all, Artur Semenov took a big penalty. He still is in the field. He's qualified 32nd, which is like, a lot of people said they didn't need to have any extra 10 spots there, but in this case, I'm glad they do, because I still think he's the favorite to beat, despite being way down here on the rankings. You can look at his other performances there. You see that they're a lot better than the one at 162, but he's a guy that I'm not so concerned about his online performances. Get him into the live competition field. We've seen what he's capable of doing the last couple of years at second, but he goes to the games and he's been 39th both of those years, and that's not great. So when you go back up to the top, Morteza Sadadkat, he made the games last year, but he's unable to get a visa to come over. I don't know if anything will have changed for him this season. So while he may have this potential to do it again in terms of qualifying in the top 2, it's hard. We don't know if we'll be able to see him. You mentioned the Russians. Yes, we got 2 Russian athletes and 3 Russians, I guess, in the top 10. Ivan Kukartsev, Ilyas Kuliev in 5th, and Ruslan Miftakov down in 7th. There's a couple others just outside, Ilya Makarov and Anton Yakovlev. So basically every season, I always like to just look and see if the Russian athletes are competing or not, if they're competing team or going individual. There's a bunch of good athletes in Russia. I'm currently still planning to go to Russia this summer if I can get the visa approved for the West Siberian Throwdown, and hopefully get a chance to meet some of these people and see what the environment is like over there. But if these guys show up to compete, which we don't know for sure if they will, I have confidence that at least one of these Russian guys will be in the mix. There is definitely some talent when it comes to CrossFit in Russia, and they do a lot of competing within their own country. So they're not, even though they haven't necessarily maybe been at those levels or at those competitions that we're watching, they do put themselves in competitive environments frequently.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the same way in the women's side too. Just kind of cover that, but we'll get back to the women. But yeah, even if these men do, we know that Semenov can make the travel to the U.S. I'm not so sure that some of these other ones, unless they've traveled to the U.S. before, and they shouldn't be waiting. Like, this is something. If I'm an Ivan, which is it looks like he competes at KD CrossFit, which is they know their stuff there. They hopefully they prepared someone like him, but the visa process should have been started a long time ago in terms of coming to the U.S. And if they haven't, if they're just waiting for semifinals to do it, then more than likely they're not going to make it to the semifinals. So that's kind of the, I don't know. That's kind of like the.
Well, it's been the same in Russia, in Asia in general for years now. It's like I don't mind having 2 representatives from there, but when you have 2 and every other year only one of them can make the trip, it's a bummer. Like, and I don't know a ton about that process in general, and I don't know what potential that CrossFit has to help or not help with those athletes, or how what that looks like necessarily. But if you just look back over a few years, you'll see that there's athletes that qualify that don't end up coming. And again, it's not unlike the quarterfinals conversation. Like, if the same thing keeps happening, then what's being done to try to prevent it from happening going forward?
Sure.
Well, there's this guy from Turkey that qualified 3rd.
I saw that.
And I mean, we were in Turkey in December. I went back there in, February. And I don't actually know this guy. The other Turkish athletes on the leaderboard, I've heard of them, but I don't know this guy. So maybe we'll have to reach out to our friends in Turkey and see if we can find out about Mevlut Agir.
Yeah. I'm going to petition, and this is how we should do it every year. If someone out of Asia, the automatic backfill out of Asia should always be Ant Haynes. That's going to be my petition, because we know that guy can travel. He's probably going to be at the games no matter what. Well, maybe not this year because there's no Masters athletes, but this is a gamer. This is a guy who showed up last year and
He's still not Masters, actually. I think this is his last year before that.
Yeah, but he normally coaches Masters athletes, and that's why he's. But yeah, he came literally. I mean, he got the invite, which he should have got the backfill anyways. But I think if he was in the U.S., if he wasn't in the U.S., he wouldn't have got invited. I think the reason why is because he was in the U.S. and was planning on coming that he got the invite. But anyway, what a performance by him. Kind of not being in that shape that he thought he was going to be in, and still performed really well at the games last year.
Yeah, yes, he did. But I think, man, I hope I'm not misspeaking here, but I feel like someone had said it was maybe a good thing he didn't make the last day because he was kind of like at the end of his capacity.
Yeah. Yep.
But that's a reason why I don't think there should be cuts at the games, because if you go look at the years that there weren't cuts, 2015 through 18 specifically, you'll see that on that last day, that's where the fittest truly make their mark.
Sure.
And it's not just the number one fittest guy, but that's where you see athletes like Dallin Pepper did last year, like Fikowski has done in the past, like BKG usually does, like Yonakoski will do. It's like they just stay steady over time. And if you go back before that to the Scott Panchiks and the Matt Chans and the Dan Baileys and the Josh Bridges and Spencer Hendels, like those guys make moves on the last day against the field. It's, that's why you got to put a little bit of stock, but not too much into what's happening online. There's guys, I mean, because everyone's making this big chaos about how good Europe is. It's like, well, they if you're just looking at quarterfinals, yeah, you have all the argument in the world to be made. But just doing good at quarterfinals, you could be doing one workout a day. But you're doing great on one workout a day, getting all the nutrition you want, body work you want, sleep you want, recovery you want, everything's perfect for you, is not what we're training for. That's not what we're competing and building towards. We're building towards a competition that demands resiliency over a 4 or 5 day competition. And the best will make their biggest impact on the last day. And it's okay for the rest to struggle on the last day. In fact, I want to see it. No more cuts. Come
on. I really hope, like, especially since I've become such a big fan of Korean like television shows, specifically Physical 100, that some of these, if I'm Physical 100, I'm reaching out to all these Korean athletes, men and women. But I would love to see Korea kind of like break through with some of these. I mean, looking at the numbers, I think I think Korea was like, in terms of the open and signups, it had like one of the biggest growths. And it's one of those countries that's continuously growing. Asia, like if I'm CrossFit, I think you got to grow in Asia if you want to hit certain numbers when it comes to affiliates and see the growth of the sport to
I don't know
continue.
if there's any more room for affiliates in Seoul, South Korea. Last
Probably
I
not.
checked, they had 240 in that city alone.
Which is ridiculous. And yeah, it's just cool to see. Maybe one of these men will break out and kind of separate themselves. Maybe not make it to the games, but I was going to ask you who your dark horse is here, but it looks like you could just throw a name out. My dark horse would be Ant, only because
Dude, I mean, look, based on what I know, I'm expecting Artur and Morteza to take the 2 spots again. And I think that one of these Russian guys, I mean, based on it's not like I don't love basing a pick on quarterfinals. Sure. I just don't know a bunch about him. It looks like Ivan. Yep. I mean, he's pretty consistent across those 4 workouts. Maybe he's lacking a little bit on the strength, only getting 54 reps there. But there's not that's 8th place, but 2nd place was 55. And you have to always consider who you're competing against. So the relative level of strength or barbell battery capacity in Asia is just less than it is in Europe and North America. And when you look at everything else, like maybe this is the guy, even though he's at the top of the leaderboard. That's a bit of a dark horse.
Yeah. Okay, let's move over to the women's side.
Women's side is quite frankly pretty different than the men's side for a lot of different reasons. Not only are there athletes here that are recognizable, there are athletes here that we know can make the trip to the U.S. There's also at least 2 athletes in this field that we know can make a mark at the game. Sung-Young Choi finished 26th there in her second year 2 years ago, which had been the best finish for any female out of Asia until Seher Kaya that placed 23rd last year. They are sitting 1 and 2 on the leaderboard. And to me, the only 5 women in this field that have a chance to make the games are the top 5 women out of quarterfinals.
Yeah, 100% agree. And you can see that kind of in the separation of points there. I don't know much about Anna Ivanova, 21-year-old. So maybe this is someone to keep an eye out on. Maybe the future of Russia here. But yeah, I totally agree with what you said. And all these athletes are kind of different too. I think what Seher does so well is that she wins events. She'll have an event that, she'll finish kind of like here in the quarterfinals. She'll finish 5th. And which is last out of this group of, she'll finish last out of this group of 5 women, but she'll win more events than any of these other women's. And she did that last year when in the semifinals where she won. I think she had the most wins in her semifinal. I think she had 4 event wins, which is more than any other athlete across the board. Now, granted, her relative to the field, it's not as impressive as some of the others, but still, it got her to the games. And Sung-Young Choi, obviously, we know she has the capability of doing that. We don't know how healthy she is. She obviously took a year off, but from all indications, she looks pretty healthy. But it'll be interesting to see how she does in live competition. And then her teammate Daewon Jung, the Korean, I think the Korean Kangaroo is her nickname. I was really impressed by her workout 62 reps. That's very impressive for someone. If you've seen her, she's a very she doesn't look strong. She looks fit, but she doesn't look strong. But for her to do 62 reps, that's very impressive. And then we talked about we're both familiar with Evie. I'm really excited to see what she does in this field. She is obviously someone that's been around, has competed on teams out of CrossFit Yaz. Just 27 years old. She's a veteran to competition.
And she competed in Sand Clash. She did quite well there. And she had a couple of really impressive workouts, especially the last one. We did stream that, so you can go back and watch it if you missed it, or if you're curious about the Asia semifinal and Evie Hollis's potential. But she's been in the UAE for 4 or 5 years now, and she has gone through the process of getting approval to compete over there. So that's an athlete who's adding her name into the mix that athletes like Kaya and Choi will have to be aware of. You're muted, Patrick.
It's cool that you mentioned that because that's something to keep an eye on, especially next year, is to see how many other athletes, because we both know there's quite a few athletes in the Asia region that live out of Dubai or the UAE. And to see if they make it they qualify for that change in region. So it might have a different look next year, Asia, if they do keep this format. I'd look at someone, there's, yeah, I could see someone like Luca, who's, has made that move to the UAE, to Abu Dhabi, maybe applying for that if they change the rules or if they don't. So,
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, we didn't talk about Luka Jukic in Europe, but because he has made the games before, just not in the last 2 years. But he will be in the mix there as well.
Yeah,
Craig
Toby
Pasty.
Buckland. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Toby didn't make the semis, but he is living in the UAE. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Your
he
interview
would
with
probably,
Ant and his brother was really interesting and informative about explaining why some countries are further ahead than others. Yeah, we had Ant and Ed Haynes on back in December or January, something like that. Great conversation with them. They've been living in Hong Kong and really, really understand the fitness scene over there and kind of ebbs and flows of it over the last decade or so. We were able to get some information from them. So again, if you're interested in CrossFit and fitness in that part of the world, that's a great listen.
yeah.
And I think that this women's competition is going to be a little bit tighter than maybe Saher Kai and Sung Young Choi fans would like it to be.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I think that's great for the region. I think that would be great for the athletes because, that'll just prepare them better for the for the games. Both of them have come close the last couple of years in terms of breaking a top 20, and I think they both have the capacity of doing that. Especially if you look at the field, the returning field, they both, I think, obviously have the capacity to finish top 20 to make that round of cuts if there are cuts, the final cuts. So.
Yeah, I think there was whether I wanted to just try to pull it up real quick because there's 16 women that are out from last year's, but of the women that finished ahead of Saher, how many will we not have this season?
Yeah, I mean, you can pull up Mike Halpin's little chart. I think here I can pull it up right here.
2, 3,
Boom.
4.
Yeah.
5,
I mean, you have the top 6,
7,
which was
7.
Yeah.
So that would put her inside the top 20. And I think that both of them, those two athletes have shown me that there are, women in Asia now that are good enough to be competing at the CrossFit Games. And that means that they have the chance to finish inside the top half of the field.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, again, I can't say that's a cool graphic, Halpin. Keep it up if you're listening. Africa. Some familiar names, but then some names that we are familiar seeing are no longer on this list. More, especially on the women. Michelle Basnet has taken the year off to kind of just concentrate on herself. She's 2 out of the last 3 years she was a representative, and and this year we'll have someone new. I mean, unless I think Dina did make it. I'm trying to remember in 2019. I'm trying to remember which. I'll have to look.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a wide open field.
Yeah, obviously.
And it's cool because we're going to have another representative that's going to be new. Michelle Moran's not in the field. Michelle Besnet's not in the field. Christina Livadatakis is probably the favorite in my mind, but she seems to always do better on the online and then have 1 or 2 workouts that really kind of trips her up and puts her in a hole at the semifinal level. I would say that the top 6 women on the coming in here are and then Tanya Boof are it's probably going to be one of them, but it's hard to narrow it down beyond that. I think that these are just athletes that we don't get to see compete anywhere else really all year round, and so it's hard to say. And you have a big range. Dina Swift is getting up there in age, and Regan Finkel is on the other side of that, is super young. I think her sister's also in the field. They're both like under 25.
There's
Regan's
3
only 21.
Yeah.
And so, kind of knowing that, I like, when I don't know a lot about the athletes, I like to think about the combination of training, age, and experience. And I'm looking at Christina Livadatakis and Gilmarie Rainick that I might pick one of those 2. But this is probably the field amongst all the semifinals that I know the least about, the women's field in Africa.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but Christina, I also agree with Christina in terms of training environment. She trains out of Australia, and we know Australia is very, CrossFit crazy. And she competes a lot in those local competitions. She's competed at Down Under Yeah, she competed at Down Under in an individual division, so she has a lot of competition experience. So she's probably the one I would look at. Gemma's kind of been on the radar for the last couple of years. She's CrossFit Yaz, you know, from South Africa, but trains out of CrossFit Yaz. You know, you can see there she was judged by Elliot Simmons, so she's another person again training environment. So those are probably the two I would look at, and I do like the Finkles. I've been waiting for the Finkel sisters to kind of break through because they've been doing it for so long in terms of the age. I think all of them pretty much started in their teens, and it was cool seeing them last year on a team. So you know that they finally made it to the games on a team. So who knows? Maybe I'd like to see them kind of pushing, especially since they're on the younger side in South Africa. They could be the new face of that region in terms of competition. On the men's side, where we got Reagan figure wasn't like games. Yeah, it was Reagan. Yeah. And some video submission issue and got those resolved. Okay, thanks, Alpin.
Tanya Buff, I would say, is like I said, I think she's in the mix as well. Mm-hmm. On the men's side, I don't know. I think this is Keelan Henry and everybody else. I know there's some talented guys. I know there are some talented guys in the field. If Keelan shows up to the competition healthy, I think he's going to take it down. But he didn't. The year he made it to the CrossFit Games, he had an injury and he wasn't he did a couple events before withdrawing. Last year, I think he withdrew from the semifinals in the middle of the competition. And so it's always difficult to bet on a guy who's kind of withdrawn from the previous two big stage live competitions that we've seen him at. So when if a healthy Keelan Henry to me is the favorite here. Ruan Duvenage has been around for a while, man. He's Masters this year. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's Masters this year, but he's got a lot of experience. Obviously, we've seen Masters athletes qualify out of Africa in the past with Jason Smith. Callum Diebel is a guy that's kind of the most interesting to me. He's, I know Darren Zernemer. I was really big on him last year. He's still young, actually.
Yeah, 23.
But I just don't know if he's strong enough. And I think that at the semifinal level, we're going to see, especially considering what we haven't seen already, I want to be surprised if we see two tests that are really going to demand top end strength. And in a field like this, where there's now 40 guys, even though, again, their strength across the board isn't going to be at the same level as North America or Europe, there are going to be some strong dudes there. And you can see it just in his performances during semis with the 25th, only getting 46 reps on that last weight. So if there's one or two tests that are really favoring towards the strong athlete, I think that's going to keep Zernemer out. And I would, that's again, like Henry's not going to struggle there. Henry's not going to struggle with the gymnastics. And I think that he has a capacity that can salvage a good finish better than some of these other guys on their bad finishes.
Yeah, I agree. Caleb, I love that. Motley Crue CrossFit. Come on, that's freaking awesome. The playlist has to be just nothing but like 80s like hairband music. So yeah.
Sarah Cooper, one more max strength or more like a ladder style. You know what? Like ladders at go back to the old regionals days. Those were really fun, and it's a cool thing. I think if they're able to put some kind of a ladder into the semis this year, that would be well received. Van Tonner was on the Cape CrossFit team with the Finkles. Yeah. And is also yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, look, Africa only gets one spot. We even saw last year that it's competitive. There'll be a battle. I just don't think that there's going to be very many athletes from well down this leaderboard that are going to make many waves up there. I think that the names that you see coming out of quarterfinals here, these are going to be the ones in contention. And if I was picking anyone, I would pick Christina and Keelan to be the qualifiers, but by no means do I think that those are guarantees.
Yeah. And coincidentally, if those are the athletes, you'll have two athletes that represent a region, but don't live or train in that region. So something to think about. Moving on to South America.
Dude, honestly, I think this is going to be one of the most fun semifinals. I mean, every year, people who go there tell us you're missing out by not coming to the semifinal. And it's hard. I mean, it is difficult for me. Like my heart is with the European semifinal. That's where I want to be more than any other place. And the North American ones are so competitive and fun. But there is a depth of field in North America, in South America, excuse me. And there are certainly some guys here that are interesting on the international level as well. But with only 2 spots and I don't know, there's 10 guys here that I'm, 1 through 40 on the men's side that I'm probably like think are really, really fucking fit and excited to watch.
Mhm.
But when it comes down to it, to me, Kalian Souza is probably the guy to beat. And I really do like Guy's chances of making it back to the games. Keke Cerveni and Agustino Calme, like those have to be the 4 favorites. But I'm pretty intrigued by this guy, João Pedro Barcelos, who had a great online qualifier here. Bruno Marins has been in the mix. He's had some
Mhm.
good runs. He just doesn't seem to be able to get over that last hurdle.
Yeah.
And I know that the Argentinians are also excited about Juan Ignacio Sforzini, who competed in Wadapalooza this year. I think he qualified second through their online qualifiers. And then got a chance to go and dip his toe into the water competing against some top international athletes. Kaique did that the year before and parlayed it into a games qualification. So those are the names that jump off the page initially to me.
Yeah. I wanted to, someone brought up like North American East men's, how many Mayhem athletes? How many Mayhem athletes do you think are in the are in the South American men's field?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, clearly with Facundo being such a strong representative for Mayhem there and also having a massive impact in South America. He travels there a few times a year for competitions and seminars. He knows a ton of these athletes. A lot of times when I don't know an athlete in South America, he's the guy that I reach out to. And they do have a lot of athletes that are, if they're not getting personal training or programming from someone at Mayhem, they're following their pro or competitive track.
Yeah, just out, I think 4 of the top 5 might be Mayhem athletes or following their programming. At least 3 are, I think, in Rochelle May, Guy, and Bruno. But yeah, I mean, obviously we would see Kalian higher up this, but he obviously received that penalty. But I mean, we've been able to see this guy. He's young. He's he's fun. He just has that great personality, and he's just overall, I just think he's probably the fittest guy in South America. So
Yeah,
um,
it's tough. Like I still would pick if Guimayeros makes the games, I think he outperforms
oh,
any of these athletes
probably
at the CrossFit Games.
yeah, just based on the programming.
Just what we saw happen to Guy last year, and if you look at his performances in the quarterfinals, second, third, 12th, 38th, it's extremely reminiscent of what we saw during semis last year, where he had a 16th and then a bunch of really dominant performances, and he was never able to erase that 16th. And again, here, if there's only 2 spots, he's sitting in the 4th spot. And, if he's not able to mitigate damage on one workout, potentially at the semis, then he might finish 4th again out there because this
Yeah,
field is pretty, it's the level is rising across the board.
yeah, it definitely is. It just marvels, like anytime, I don't know, but Guy just any workout that has wall balls in it, he just, I don't know. I just don't know if it's a capacity of all that squatting, because you would think that someone with his strength and his ability to squat so much, he would have a higher capacity when it comes to a large number of squatting events, when an event that calls for a lot of squatting, but seems to always suffer when it comes to like wall balls or a large number of squatting.
Yeah. So I don't know if I was, at this point, if I was looking at it, Souza is the guy, and I think there's a ton of guys right behind him. I think that it would be nice to see Guy make a return to the games, though. The conversation I had with him in Miami this year was very refreshing. It was after the competition had ended, and he seemed to be very much at peace, very comfortable with his life in general, but also motivated to compete. So, he's clearly popular in South America, and you throw a guy like that into the games field, and you're going to get some special moments.
Yeah. Oh, and congratulations to him and his
Sarah, that's what I was looking for, the hat trick workout. Yeah,
yeah.
so this is a smaller volume, and
Yeah.
and in a short time domain. I think it's the bigger volume, longer time domain that's a little bit more problematic than necessarily the movement in isolation.
Yeah, because I think of that workout, and then I think of not the that workout you're just talking about. But I was thinking about that Wadapalooza workout from 2 years ago, where it had a large. What was it? Was it a swim and wall balls?
And maybe jump rope.
Yeah, the double unders with the drag rope. But I saw him suffering a lot with that wall ball.
But again, longer time domain.
Exactly. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, congratulations to Guy and his fiance for getting their green cards. So,
That's right.
They were able to go to New York City and get that taken care of. So yeah, I think I don't know what their plan is, but that helps out Guy. I know he's had some difficulties with some of the traveling here and back and forth, but that actually helps out a lot. And maybe that might be helpful for him, because I know last year, he kind of got stuck maybe down in Brazil, or wasn't allowed back in the US for a certain amount of time because of he didn't have the right documentation. So hopefully this makes it a lot easier on him. Yeah. So the women's side.
Well, I know this probably hasn't been mentioned as much because she's a lot lesser known name. But one of the athletes that I thought would have a chance to maybe make a breakthrough in the individual side is currently outside the top 40. She's sitting in 41st. Her name is Amanda Fusuma, excuse me, from Brazil. She's had 3 top 10 finishes at semis the last 3 years. She was third 2 years ago, and she's just 27 years old. I thought that she would be in the top 5 again this year, but right now she's on the outside. Maybe she'll get a backfill, but you can see her results there. Big penalty on workout 1, dropping her down to 152 reps. Man, that's brutal.
Wow,
compared to
is.
those other 3 finishes. You see how big of an outlier that is. So that if she doesn't make it to the semifinal, that's a loss in terms of that field that I would say is for that region on par with a Nick Matthew, Paige Powers type of omission from a semifinal field for them. But nevertheless, athlete to beat in this region far and away is Victoria Campos. And the second spot to me is extremely wide open, maybe even more so than the men.
Yeah, I mean, in past years, it was usually taken up by someone like Julia Cato. At what point? I mean, we've been waiting for her to break out. Is this woman right here, Luisa Marquez?
Yeah, and she's she's still young. I trained with her at the Mayhem camp 2 Januaries ago now, so about 15, 16 months ago, and was really impressed with some of the things that she was able to do. Especially, she's only 20 at the time, so she's seeing her placing really well here. I absolutely think that she'll be in contention. You mentioned Julia Cato; she competed and won in Sand Clash. So if you want to see kind of what her form is like right now, you can go check that out there. Pretty good in 3 of the workouts, 45 reps on the last workout. Not great. But I still think she'll be in the mix to make it back to the games. And then the woman who qualified second, Emily Andrade. There's a lot of talented women from Brazil. She's been climbing the ranks over the last 3 years, from 15th to 11th and then 5th last year. So maybe this is the year that she finally breaks through. Those are kind of the big names that jump out to me as the most likely ones to qualify. But Andrea Pinheiro is another one. She got a penalty. I know she's gotten some conversation for other things, but you see it. Hers was actually in the second workout. She's 41 years old. She was in the second qualifying spot prior to the penalty, and who knows? Maybe she's still in the mix. And then there was one other one down here.
Laura Gonzalez Marin.
I don't know. I mean, I'll see if I find it. But yeah, those are the names that I would say jump off the page to me as the most likely ones to make it. I think it's this girl. No. All right, never mind.
Never mind.
There's some names up here that I don't know. I mean, the Gabriela Luque, who's in second, Lilian Nagao, who's in 5th. I don't know anything about these 2 women. Same with the woman from Uruguay, Lucila Caro. So, those are some maybe some new names up on the leaderboard as well this year. But there's a huge. It's similar to South Korea. There's a huge contingency of growth in South America with CrossFit. Tons of affiliates down there. And when that's happening, you're sure to see some new names pop up on the leaderboard each year.
Well, that's it. We got it. We figured that. We did it. We got those other. Yeah, did it. Congrats, Brian. Shoot, was trying to pull up the leaderboard for Crash Crescendo. Let me see if I can find it. Crescendo.
You wish, Audrey. You wish.
Is that on local comp?
Did I say something? I must have said something inappropriate.
Did you say something bad? I cannot find the leaderboard. Did JR switch?
I don't know. It's local comp that does the leaderboards for them.
Okay, let me see. Let me see if I can pull that.
Yeah,
Either
we were
way.
trying to. For those that have been with us the whole show, we were trying to hold on the Crash Crescendo recap just to see if we could have a guest join us. I don't think he's going to be able to, but that's okay. We tried to get Angelo to come, but he's got some work to get done today. And he was there with the CrossFit Mayhem team. This year, I know that people were giving me some hard time on the live stream. They were listed as Mayhem Independents for that competition. Usually I call the people by what? Oh, we should send it to Sam, his teammate. Usually I call athletes by what they're listed on the leaderboard as, and similarly with teams, but they're competing as Mayhem this year. I think that the Mayhem Freedom team is retired, and man, they were really good. It was I'm not surprised by that, but they showed their class across all 3 days and all 6 workouts. They did really well, of course, with the worm. And JR in general, even with the teams, he programs workouts that they're like a very specific focus: midline destruction, grip fatigue, upper body pressing that's going to just compound on itself with a variety of different things. And the capacity that the 4 athletes on that team, which are Angelo and Sam, and then Zoe Jones and Molly McGrandy, showed to kind of answer the call on every one of those tests was pretty good. And they had top 3 finishes on all the workouts, and their biggest competitor was the Grit House, who maybe had 1 finish outside the top 3. But, Molly McGrandy was a new addition to their team this year, and she seemed like she fit in very seamlessly. And that, to me, was probably the biggest takeaway, because when it comes down to it, to be great in this sport as a team, yes, you have to have, 4 very talented people, but you also need to have that camaraderie and that ability to, it's almost like nonverbal communication when you're under stress and fatigue. And it seemed like they were doing that really well. Sam's not going to be able to jump on. He's got a busy work day as well, but he's listening.
Yep. He just messaged me back. But thanks for listening, Sam. Is Zoe available? Send Zoe the link, Sam.
85. So they did have a 4th Mayhem in event number 1. And I think it was also the worst finish for the Grit House. Yeah, they were 1 spot behind him in 5th. If you're looking at the board here, because and you didn't watch any of the coverage, 5 of those 6 teams will be at the North America East semifinal. And, all of them took advantage of what JR provides in terms of an opportunity to come there and learn from their training. It was quite interesting to watch because, Ocean State came in as the top qualifier out of quarterfinals, and they had a really up and down weekend relative to, Mayhem, who had that very consistent performance. And then you had, Mayhem Liberty, who comes in with a much lower seed than them in the 17th, but ends up only finishing 5 points behind them on a leaderboard at the end of the day. And I think that that's just an insight into what's going to happen as far as teams are concerned at semifinals. While we went through a lot of those leaderboards and talked about names that were towards the top, because those are likely going to be towards the top again at semis in their respective regions, I don't think that's always the case in the team competition. What you're capable of programming online for teams compared to in person is very different, which is one of the reasons why I think that these teams who made the decision to come and compete here, especially the ones that are in the semifinal at the North America East, that they're going to go back with some advantages in terms of having like real experience in competition that they can apply to whatever the semifinals test ends up being for the teams in Knoxville.
I think we saw that. A perfect example is Move Fast Lift Heavy, who competed last year and then went to semifinals and had a great semifinals and a really, really packed field. At one point, they were winning that semifinal over the Team Proven. And I think they finished 3rd?
checking
Yeah,
out. I
second.
knew
I think
you
they
were
finished
going to ask.
second because I think they finished second.
They end up
But,
finishing second, yeah. And it
yeah,
was, then it was AB Mayhem, and then Mayhem
yep,
Independence, and then Grit House in sixth.
yeah. It's unfortunate for someone like Grithouse, but it is. But yeah, in these in-season competitions, and I think you did a good job of interviewing Angelo right afterwards, um, and he said it himself. It's like, a lot of positives. We see a lot of things we need to go back and work on, and a lot of that stuff you won't find out until you're live competing against other teams with that adrenaline, with something on the line, with a worm. I mean, Mayhem is probably better fit than most teams because they have a number of worms, and before the games, they usually bring in all those teams come in, and they, like last year, I believe Torian, Mayhem Torian, and the Mayhem Independence team, they had like a mini 3-day mock games, which was really cool. But still, when you're competing against people that aren't in house, it's a little bit different. And I think it's really cool that more teams are taking advantage of this. And yeah, I could just see a lot more growth coming out of this, especially when you tie in JR's name and Brian on the ones and twos on the broadcast.
Yeah, there was a moment in one of the workouts that had a lunging with the worm, and they had to do a turnaround. And the teams had, some different strategies. Some of them popped it up on their shoulder, all spin around and receive it again and walk. Others will drop it and clean it. And you saw some teams that tried both, but Mayhem, their top team, they had a little miscommunication on one of the turnarounds. And I asked them afterwards what happened, and they're like, more or less, they said, those are that's why we came here, for those moments. So and they walked me through that. Sam was at the front of the worm, and he was like, I thought I could get there in one step. I ended up needing two. The team thought we were going to need one, but now you have a worm on your shoulder. Everyone's behind you. How do you communicate that? The judge is telling them, and it just threw them off enough and they didn't gather themselves and get it back together. And they ended up, the Grit House ended up lunging past them on the final length, where they had a 20-foot lead at one point in that workout in terms of where to lunge, and they gave it away. The penalty in a competition like that is minor, but the penalty at the semifinal or at the games level could be much more significant if you make a mistake like that. So having the chance to go through that process just a month or so before you have to do it when it matters most, because for these teams, we've been talking about this on the individual level. We knew that there were going to be athletes that aren't going to make it to the semifinal stage of competition, and there's a ton of other opportunities for them to compete. But when you put a team together like this, you're putting that team together for the CrossFit Games season. And if your CrossFit Games season doesn't go well, there's not a ton of other opportunities for teams of 4, 2 male, 2 female at the top level to compete. So that semifinals weekend is massive for them. Some people might argue, there's a risk for injury or this or that or the other. There's always that. And if that's how you're approaching sports in general, it's like, okay, then if you always, when I played soccer, they would say like the person who goes in hardest for the tackle is the one that's going to come out the best. If you go in tentatively, football is the same thing. You're going to, be the one who takes the brunt of the force. You have to put yourself on the line to compete, and it should be fun to do so, rewarding, and a good opportunity. And so, yeah, talking to those guys a little off camera, a little on camera, that was definitely the case for them, just like it was for the teams that competed there last year. And win a little prize money along the way.
Yeah. And if you go back and watch Brian's Instagram, you'll see Brian competing with a special play-by-play
from Angelo.
Angelo's commentary was amazing. Have you rewatched it?
I did watch it. And I talked to him about it.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. I like what he said about Taylor's team about being the palest,
pasty.
The pastiest. Yeah, team pasty.
That team in third there, let's see what happens. Is not a team that's competing in the CrossFit Games season, but they do have 2 athletes on the team that will be at the semifinals individually. Evan Ross and Caroline Stanley. They competed with Tristan Fourier and Bryn Carrick. Accomplished athletes in their own regard, and they were clearly the third best team there. I mean, they had a really good performance. As you can see, they started with an event win. They had some closed with 3 consecutive third place finishes, and they had nearly a 50-point gap ahead of Reignited, who they came in as the 4th place qualifier out of North America East going into the semifinal. And that's a pretty good team too. So It's fun. It was cool to see, because what we end up having is 5 teams that are going to be at the semifinal amongst those top 8, and then 3 kind of the Grit House is, they would have been at the semis, and then the Crash Kids and Let's See What Happens are not teams in the season that still showed up there and competed very well. The Crash Kids were really good on some of the tests. You see a 2nd and a 3rd place finish there in the 1st and 3rd workout. So yeah, pretty fun competition all around. And I think if you're looking forward and projecting forward, obviously things are looking good for Mayhem Independence, Reignited, Ocean State, Mayhem Liberty. I would say all 3 of those teams have a chance to make the CrossFit Games based on what I saw this weekend. Spindle City is the other team that'll be at the semifinal. They qualified 22nd. I'm not sure about their chances to make the games, even though they have very talented athletes there.
Yeah. But it's cool. You mentioned Crash Kids and Let's See What Happens. Those aren't real teams that are competing in the game season, but this could put the seeds in for perhaps doing something like that. What better competition to see how you compete, especially if you're a team or you're an athlete that wants to make the games, but you don't see your path going through being an individual, then why not go team? If your goal is to make it to the games, put a team together and see what happens. And I know that's obviously a step that I try to tell some athletes, especially if they're kind of on that border of or cusp of making the games. Like, let's make it to the games first and then see what happens. And that's a good example with one of the teams out west. And the underdogs team, the service dogs team, none of them individually made it to the games, but collectively they can. So
Sarah leaves, Jeff shows up. We're always in good company.
Yep. Well, shoot, man, we got a lot done. We talked about a lot. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, just to reiterate that this is not the last that you'll hear of us breaking down the semifinal fields. Next week I'll put out some stuff about. I'm still gonna, for those cases that we saw with Brad Wilson today, I'm just gonna wait to see. They'll have to send out invites. We'll start to see the roster populate, but I'll put out some my picks for semifinals basically next week, and then week by week we'll go through those in depth. Previewing the semifinals that are actually happening that week. We'll see. Obviously, by the time week 2 and 3 come around, we'll have workout information. I think they'll probably do the same this year, where they'll release the workouts 1 week prior to the first semifinal. So hopefully, even that week, we'll be able to talk about them.
Yeah,
that
and
then is a problem, CrossFit. You're right. You're right. And there's we tried to be conscientious of that. My schedule makes it difficult for us sometimes, but could certainly be better as a community about that. I agree.
Thanks for noticing, Jeffrey. Yeah, I gotta wear this when I can because it's starting to get hot. Yeah. So next week, let's talk rest of the week again. Like Brian said at the beginning of the show.
Actually, speaking of that, there's something else I wanted to throw out there. Because see of what's happened with quarterfinals this year, we know that some athletes' games seasons are over, despite being in really good shape. And many have advertised that they're potentially even in the best shape of their life. There are a lot of great opportunities to compete. If you are an athlete or an athlete who is looking for other ways to compete this year, since the game season didn't happen for you, get in touch with us and let us know. And yeah, here, Vindicate has a solution. Open the browsers, turn the volume off for everybody, and you give everyone the views.
True.
Vindicate crushed it down here at the Crash Crescendo. As always, it's great to see him there. I did feel bad for the drive home. He had a 4-hour delay on going through the mountain passes of Tennessee or North Carolina. There, it's brutal, but guy works as hard as anyone. And CrossFit was already had that strategy in mind. Anyway, if you're an athlete who's looking to compete, some athletes already have reached out to us, and we appreciate it. We will do our best to try to make suggestions. We're making a couple of amendments to our world tour adding a couple. There was a competition that was canceled, but we have a pretty good pulse on where the top level competitions are. So if you're looking for some in like the June, July area, there's a few in Europe, there's a few in North America. Once you get to September and going forward from there, there's a lot more, but some of those you can, like for the Summit Games, for example, you can already sign up for that. It's open registration. Turin Tuomiopiva in Finland, Belgrade Games in Serbia are both in early September. There'll be qualifiers for those coming up. If you're elite, like a really elite athlete who had your season cut short, you may be able to get an invite. We'll see about that. I know Metcon Rush will be doing some invites based on the quarterfinals, and then also after semifinals. They're in the middle of July this year. So those are just some that are on the radar coming up. So again, if you're an athlete or you know an athlete who's looking for competition opportunities outside of the game season, there are many. I've been talking with the guys from Dubai. They're waiting to get some details locked in, but that will be coming up again in December. So pay attention, because that's something that is really important to us, is that just because the game season is over for you doesn't mean that the opportunity to compete for this year is over for you. And if we can help in any way, whether it's directing you there, putting you in touch with someone, making you aware of a competition that you may not have been, that's something that we would love to be able to do.
Or you could also do this. I actually thought about this, because I think the 3 major semifinals have community events. Just, show up, win that, and then you can say that you won a semifinal. What was that? But so tomorrow, those are shows we have coming up probably for next week. But for tomorrow, we have Griffin Raleigh on to catch up with him and also talk about a little bit. You got a camp this weekend. Talk about Grid League, which is great. He's one of the cool personalities. I've gotten to know him a couple times on the road. So it'd be really cool to get his perspective on that and talk about Grid. And then the following day, obviously, we got Kiefer and Kyra coming on. So busy week ahead of us. If you go to our story, you'll see kind of like a channel guide. We're trying to work a little bit ahead and put a little channel guide up there, so that way you can either subscribe or get alerts whenever we do stuff. I know most of you that are in the chat already subscribe and get the alerts, but pass the word along. As you see, our channel is rapidly growing. What Brian did say about some of the competitions that the tour is going on, that's also an opportunity that not only is Brian going to these competitions, but some of those competitions we are broadcasting live on our YouTube channel, just like what we did with Crash Crescendo. So that's something we're really kind of pushing, to give some of these competitions the ability to live stream their event and on a professional setup and with a professional person, broadcasting it. And by professional, I mean Angelo.
Jeff, are you asking like IF3 that's in like the reindeer antler velvet? I don't. Is he asking about the IF3, like International Functional Fitness Federation?
I'm pretty sure that's what he's talking about.
Maybe it's IGF3. See you at Metcon Rush. Man, I have been unable to get to Metcon Rush the past couple of years. That's global fitness, but okay. But Metcon, I actually spoke with the guy who runs Metcon Rush this morning. He is looking at the leaderboards and marking down some names that he wants to be sensitive to those athletes. But I think it's IGF1. Yeah, IGF1. That's what it is. It's taking me back to a prior life. Thank you, CrossFit. He reserves spots at his competition for athletes who don't make it as far in the game season as they want. And we've already been able to push a couple athletes in that direction. And it's a really well-run competition out on the East Coast. I love to support the stuff that he's doing, but I'm going to be in Scotland for Watt on the Lock that weekend. Hopefully we will eventually have Kyle Russell on the show. He was unable to make it last week when he was supposed to, but that he booked me pretty early on, so I didn't get the chance to go to Metcon Rush again this year, unfortunately.
All right. Ray Lewis claims that's all he took. Speaking of football, did you follow the draft at all?
I watched the first pick and then I said, okay, here we go. If we can't get that, if we can't get it right with that guy, I mean, all the talk that people have been saying about this kid, and all the misery in terms of quarterbacks that the Chicago Bears franchise has had over the years, if they don't get it right this time with that guy, I'm gonna start rooting for a different team.
This guy, you mean?
You've been damn, dude, you're stacking up some cards there.
Yeah. It's his first rookie card.
Okay, Melanie says the Bears did great in the draft. I mean,
I agree. I mean, their ninth was they picked probably the best wide receiver, so they're giving them weapons, and so
doesn't matter if you have a great quarterback and wide receiver if your line can't buy you 2.5 seconds of time every snap.
Mm-hmm. But it was definitely an interesting draft. So, yeah, I think not the Bears, but was it Detroit? Might have been Detroit. Well, some team, they made like 8 trades during the draft.
Dang. Well, active. We'll see how it works out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then lastly, I guess, we want to always thank HGR CBD. They've been making some moves. It's great. I'm really happy for Carl that they've partnered up with Taylor and JR and Shut Up and Scribble. They sponsored Taylor's team at the Crash Crescendo this weekend. And he's been promoting them. And it's one thing for me to say that I use their products. It's another thing for guys like Taylor, who's like, he's training hard every day. He's competing hard every day. He did that workout, the Kill Taylor workout that had rope climbs and kettlebell snatches on Friday. The first workout on Saturday had kettlebell snatches and chest to bar pull-ups. The last workout had legless rope climbs. He did like 15 of those. And he's been using that. I see him using it at the gym to help keep his body fresh so he can come back. Someone, I posted this thing that I was using the super greens in the morning. Like that's not CBD. That's just a healthy way to get some nutrients into your body. I just put it in with a glass of water that I would be drinking anyway, that I always drink first thing in the morning. By the way, that's probably the simplest change you can make to your diet. If you're not doing it, is just drink a full glass of water or two first thing upon waking up in the morning. Forget about putting anything in it. Just start with that. But if you are doing that, the greens is really great. It's easy to drink. The Relief stick is super easy to apply. If you have someone that can rub the other topical balm on it, it's good. And then, they do have a CBD gummy that a lot of my friends like to take when they're around. And I usually take it at night when I'm home.
Oh, sorry. Whatever you say. Yeah. Let's see what, yeah. So you're off to Georgia.
That's this weekend. Yeah, we got plenty of stuff to talk about this week. We'll talk with Griffin Raleigh tomorrow about that, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's Tuesday. It feels like a freaking Thursday. I don't know.
It feels like Monday to me because I lost yesterday to hanging out with a buddy of mine, but didn't get much work done.
Yeah. Well, I got a lot of Army work done yesterday, not so much other work, but I don't know. But anyways, yeah. Speaking of the devil, someone calling me. So, but anyways, yeah, thanks to everyone for showing up. Yeah, that was basically kind of like our unofficial leaderboard show for, we really hit on a lot of those other regions, but a lot more is coming up in the next coming weeks. A lot of stuff is obviously, but appreciate it. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow when we talk with Griffin. So as always, be friendly, our friends.